Hello, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us today as we break down new insights from Quantometric's latest benchmark report, The Fall of Peak. We're going to be taking a look at how consumer behaviors are changing during peak campaigns across the year and what that means for the holidays. My name is Lori Niquette, and I am the Director of Data Storytelling here at Quantometric. And I'm very excited to be joined by my friend and colleague, Megan Hastings, who is our Director of Insight Services at Quantometric. Now, Megan, I'd say the big difference between our roles is I tend to look at those bigger trends that we might find within our anonymized data, but you have the unique opportunity to take those trends and connect with our actual customers on what it means for their business.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, Lori. I think that's the perfect definition of what our roles entail. I also lead a team of digital experts and I work closely with those clients to dive into consumer behavior. And then I turn insights into strategies that make a real impact for those clients. And I'm really excited to be here today talking to you and the audience about the most wonderful time of the year.
Couldn't agree more. So let's dig into it. I want to start with one of the big questions that we focused on for this report, which was understanding that we're seeing an increase in the frequency of sale days across the year, right? The fact that we have two prime days. I feel like the fall had a holiday sale every other day. And we wanted to understand how that's really changing consumer behavior. And one of the first takeaways that we found with that is it's changing how we think about traffic volumes. What we might have seen in 2022 or 2023 is more of the peaks and valleys, those dips and rises as people come in for different sale days. But with so many sale days available, our data actually shows that that's starting to level out and people are coming fairly consistently to websites across the year. The catch with this is that they're not necessarily purchasing every time. In fact, we're finding there's a pretty significant stretch in the amount of times a person will visit before they make a purchase. On average, it's about 2 to 3 visits. But if it's a higher value action or a higher priced item, say like a holiday gift, it might be 4 to 6 times. And so, Megan, I'd love to start with as we're seeing some of these changes in the way consumers are browsing, how should that change brand strategic approach to peak periods like the upcoming holiday season?
Hey, that's a great question, Lori. And I think this really highlights the need for continuous optimization. And consumers really expect brands to always be ready. And the most successful digital brands embrace this by actively monitoring and adapting. It's not
Mhm.
just about preventing issues, it's about quickly identifying and addressing them. So when teams combine data with their expertise, it really fosters collaboration and innovation. But I also think it's an opportunity for brands to build loyalty and top of mind awareness among their consumer base. So the most effective brands meet consumers or customers where they spend their time. And as social engagement increases, we see more consumers beginning and continuing their engagement with a brand from social. And I actually have a personal example to share about this of a brand who is actually a client of ours and how they found me on social media after I moved. So I began shopping for a breakfast table through Google. And eventually, this brand snuck into my Instagram feed and showed these images of a beautiful breakfast table. So after I made a table for purchase from this brand, I began to receive dining chair recommendations and then other complimentary products. And these were all through various social media platforms. And so that was kind of interesting. And I saw, since they were a client of ours, I saw that in 60 days, I had visited their app 140 times.
Oh,
And I don't know
wow.
if that's just me, but yeah, 140 times. And now they've become my go to store for home essentials. And I think this is really a testament to how well targeted engagement and campaign can drive loyalty and those repeat purchases.
That's great. I couldn't agree more. I have to say, I'm glad I don't track how many visits I have to brand sites because it would probably be 140 or more. But I think you
Yes.
make a great point about how
It's kind of embarrassing for me to admit that, to be honest with you, but why not?
when you're just taking your time.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say is I do think that's a great point about loyalty too. As we think about these visits, each touch point is an opportunity to build that better relationship with your customer, which makes me think a little bit. if we're thinking about success metrics, conversions tend to get used pretty often as that top KPI. But are there other metrics that digital brands should be thinking about for peak periods and beyond that maybe go a little bit beyond that conversion rate?
Yeah, well, I do believe that conversion rate and revenue are tried and true. So please keep monitoring those. This is not trying to steer anyone away from monitoring those, but also as social refers to sites are increasing, we're seeing, or we know that historically social segments bring a lot of traffic to sites quickly, but they tend to have lower conversion rates than other segments. So for that group, I would recommend using both consideration and conversion KPIs, because consideration really helps drive return visitors and then also boost personalization based on customer interests. And then I'd also recommend tracking both new and return users within that time frame. But thirdly, I'd also recommend that brands consider looking at revenue per session as well. And this is just a metric to understand average revenue generated by each visit to a website or app. And monitoring this can really help optimize each session and make it more valuable, which means a smarter use of resources.
That's great. I especially love the idea of consideration rate, since that tends to bring in that
Mhm.
success and how far are you bringing the customer in each time, right? So that's a
Right.
really great one for our customers to think about.
I
Um,
agree.
Great. So I want to then jump a little bit more into some sales habits, as while we're seeing consumers are taking a look more frequently at these sites. They're taking a little bit longer to purchase. What we're also finding too is there's overall just less urgency around sale days. In fact, 40% of consumers say because there's so many sale days available to them, they don't feel that same urgency to make a purchase on a particular sale day because they know another one's going to come along. And what we're seeing is that this is having an impact on what conversion rates can look like, especially as we go into the holidays. When we take a look at the fall, as traffic rates continue to grow, conversion rates dipped by about 5%. And so this starts to make me think, and I'd be interested in your thoughts, Megan, if sales alone are not driving urgency, they can't drive those conversions. What can digital brands do to help better drive some of that activity during promotional times?
I think it's a great question and one that's on the top of a lot of digital leaders' minds. But in my opinion, it's not just about offering the best price; it's about delivering the best experience. So brands can use customer data to personalize interactions, such as tailored recommendations, loyalty perks, or even offers based on past behavior. So, for example, if we go back to my furniture shopping experience, I bought a breakfast table and I was shown matching chairs and then later place settings, which is a perfect fit for the holidays. So, selling an experience really taps into a customer's emotions and that helps build a deeper connection. So, creating a unique brand identity, whether through community involvement or even sustainability efforts, also helps build loyalty and gives customers that sense of belonging. So, brands that build communities can help engage customers beyond just the transaction.
I love that. I was thinking a little bit more about how you continue to build that customer relationship.
Mhm. Yeah.
Did you buy the chairs? I have to ask. Have they been purchased yet?
They have been purchased and they are on their way, but I don't think
There
they're
you
going to be
go.
delivered till after the holidays. So
Oh
I won't be
no.
hosting this year. But it's a good thing, probably.
Yes, you still got the chairs, and that's fantastic. All right,
None of the
so we've already talked
responsibility
a
of
little.
hosting. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry. None of the responsibility of hosting, though.
yes, that's sometimes better though.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've been talking a little bit about bad joke time, but the Santa Claus in the room, talking about holiday shopping. And we both know that Cyber 5 is coming up with Black Friday and Cyber Monday. And if we're thinking about this lack of urgency around sales, there's likely going to be an impact to Cyber 5, right? And we took a look at our data and found that even with all of the early fall sales, 72% of consumers have still done in less than 10% of their holiday shopping. That's actually less than I have done, and I'm a pretty late shopper, so that was surprising to me. But I think what was more surprising was when we asked digital leaders if they thought Cyber 5 was going to be their highest volume of sales this year, less than 50% agreed. Um, so this starts to make me think, if conversions and sales might not be as big of a win, what are those goals that digital brands should be focused on going into the holidays? Where else can they find success in some of those big wins?
That's a great question. And I believe the holidays are still a big deal, but yes, the focus is shifting. Brands are using this season to not just drive sales, but also to gather insights on new customers and then build stronger relationships with the customers that they already have. So it's really a great time for brands to connect with people, make a positive impression, and set the stage for future loyalty.
That's great. I love that idea. It's an opportunity to bring in new customers. I know it's always a time of year that I find new brands to follow. So that's great. Okay. So then let's talk about what really impacts that, which is the overall experience, right? And the ways that we're able to seamlessly enjoy a website and go through it, even if we have issues. So, what we found that's interesting is the big issue when it comes to frustrations and experience errors is that many times consumers don't report them. In fact, our data showed that only 23% of consumers reach out for help when they encounter a browsing issue. More than half say they're going to come back later or they're probably going to go to a different website. And then for those who do report, this is where I think we find the most interesting discrepancy. 73% of them say if I reported an issue to you, be it on the call center, be it, in a chat or other service channel, I expect that issue to be resolved within a few hours. But when we asked digital leaders about that, they said it could take 1 to 2 days to take that feedback and incorporate it into their priorities and find a fix. Um, so there seems to be a pretty decent gap in how we manage and identify frustrations and incorporate customer feedback. In your opinion, what are some of the ways that brands can close that and what steps can they take to improve the way that they're reacting to customer issues?
I love that metric, Lori, that 73%. And, going back to my first point of the presentation was, you know, digital leaders need to meet consumers' expectations where they're at. So, um, I think that number speaks to those expectations. So you're right. Most consumers do stay silent when experiencing an issue, and a lot of them tend to go elsewhere. And one way to be prepared is to set up dashboards and alerts to monitor the experience. So some of my favorite metrics to monitor during this peak time can really help alert us when issues arise. And the first of those being, monitoring the conversion funnel. And I would monitor for conversion rate drops and also abandoned carts here. Secondly, technical errors. And specifically technical errors in key flows like checkout or login, where customers' expectations are high for reaching a next step. Or even, 404 errors or out of stock errors when customers are being directed to pages that aren't available or product that's not available. And then finally, friction errors such as rage clicks or bounce rating increases as well. And just to give an example of a real time issue that we monitored and uncovered using this method, we had a retail brand that mistakenly advertised a holiday promotion code as extra 15 instead of get 15. And this actually led to customer frustration and cart abandonment. And our platform detected this and an alert fired, and it alerted the brand, who then sent out an email that honored both codes. So they were able to honor both codes and they actually reached out to customers to encourage them to complete their purchases. So they already had the customer's email address since they were already in the checkout flow. They already had, a basket, a product. And it actually turned a potential setback into increased conversion rates in that experience. So just an example of one way you can monitor that experience.
Definitely. And I think that's a great example because it goes back to what you were saying before, too, about that need to build brand loyalty. It's not that
Mhm.
you can't get anything wrong. But when you do get something wrong, having the right steps to mitigate it and to help that customer complete their purchase is so important.
Absolutely. Yes.
Great. And that actually fits really nicely into the last piece I want to talk about, which is payments. And we both know that payment errors can come up, especially when you're thinking about third party payment apps, especially during the holidays. In fact, our data showed that 35% of digital leaders report that their biggest issues with payment flows involves third party payment apps. But what I think was most interesting is this isn't just a concern for digital leaders, it's a concern for consumers too. In fact, 51% of consumers say that they go to a website and they test out a site's checkout and payment process before they're going to go ahead and make that purchase, make that booking. So it's something that, we could say keeps them up at night a little bit. And when you think about limited sale days, like say a Taylor Swift concert, we're finding that consumers are going a few days before to make sure that they can get that payment process right, that PayPal's not going to cause them an issue, that they're not going to have their address in incorrectly. So we see a lot of anxiety around this, and so as we think about how do we improve the customer experience, I'd be interested in your thoughts, Megan, on obviously are there ways to prevent these types of payment errors, but then if they can't be prevented, what steps can brands take to help mitigate some of those challenges?
I think that's a great question. And first off, I want to call out my earpods as the day goes on, they keep on falling out. So I apologize for that. But um, what we're seeing is, more brands are adding those one-click payment options like Apple or Google Pay, ahead of the holiday season. And I want to commend that because these quick payment options can really boost conversions, especially with mobile shoppers and impulse buyers, since it really cuts down on that decision time. But that being said, during Cyber 5 last year, we found that 1 in 5 customers ran into issues with third party payment services at checkout. So, beyond pinpointing what caused any API issues, it's really critical to have a plan in place for response and mitigation because it can really help avoid disruptions and maintain a smooth checkout, especially when a customer is so motivated to complete that funnel and there's high motivation to continue on to the next step. And having the right visibility into that issue can also help inform brands on how they respond to the issue, much like the promo code issue we just spoke about in the last example.
Yeah, that's a great point. It all comes back to that awareness and being able to take action.
Right.
Great. Well, we've covered off on a lot of topics today around peak behaviors. To close us out, if our audience was going to walk away with just 1 to 2 big lessons to bring back to their teams, what would you say those should be?
Well, first off, I would emphasize the importance of customer data. The opportunities here are endless, and brands should be really prioritizing capturing emails, phone numbers, browsing behaviors, and other items, to build databases for future marketing, especially as privacy changes are making first party data more valuable. Brands can use this information repeatedly to segment audiences, improve personalization, and then also to tailor future campaigns to those customer preferences. And then, secondly, I would say, speaking to the monitoring and alerting piece, having the right tools and processes in place prior to peak is really essential for making sure customer expectations are met. And it can also help brands, teams feel prepared and empowered and confident going into that peak season.
Great. I couldn't agree more. It's all about monitoring and then understanding how to use and let your customer data. So, with that, Megan, I want to thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time
Thank
to break
you.
down this data
Yeah.
with me. It's been a lot of fun. And if our audience wants to go even deeper on these insights, we'd encourage you to take a look at Quantometric's full peak campaign report, the fall of peak. This is where we're going to get a little more granular on those purchasing habits we've covered. We'll also talk about mobile behaviors and, of course, more discrepancies between consumer demands and the priorities of digital leaders. Thank you all so much for joining us today, and we will see you next time.